Sweet. All right, welcome in. We are at Navigating the School System, the third time we are delivering this session, the third of four. So it will be offered again. If you're like, that was awesome, other people should come. It'll happen again. And we are gonna kind of jump into it. Once I get my screen back to where it should be. All right. So quick introduction of who we are as your presenters today. My name is Joey Heilman. I am the Senior Education Strategy Specialist. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm excited to be here with you all today. I'm gonna pass it off to Samie.
Morning, everyone. My name is Samie Iverson. I use she, her pronouns. My title with Building Changes is Senior Manager of Education Strategy. Also really happy to have you all joining us today. I'm going to pass it to Kayla.
Good morning. My name is Kayla Blau. I'm a consultant with Building Changes, and I'm excited to be here with y'all.
I love my presenting team. Kayla and Sam are the best. All right, Kayla.
All right, so we're going to start with a tribal land acknowledgement and to acknowledge the Indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and who still inhabit the area today. The Building Changes headquarters or office is on the land of the Duwamish and Coast Salish people. And just in the context of this training, we would like to acknowledge the harms done by the public education system on Indigenous people, the legacies of boarding schools, and the mistreatment still to this day. So we just wanted to acknowledge that to set the stage for the training.
Thank you, Kayla. And you can see the link that Samie dropped if you would like to see whose land you are on. I encourage everyone to take a look at that. They did update the map recently, so there may be some new tribal land that you can now acknowledge. Not new land, but new to your knowledge. All right, a few little Zoom things. Been doing it for a while, so nothing should be too surprising here. But first, please make sure that if you are trying to receive clock hours for today's training, that you have your name in PD Enroller match your name in Zoom. So you can use the three little dots top of your little picture and change your name so it matches what's in PD Enroller. That's important for attendance reconciliation later. We do have live captions that should be active and available. If for some reason they are not active, they should be. They look like they are on my end, but if you're unable to get them up, please let me know and I'll problem solve the tech side. Other Zoom things, please stay muted unless you're speaking. We will have opportunity to ask questions and kind of get into conversation with each other. So we will have opportunities to unmute. We do ask that folks try and either use the raise the hand button. We'll also be trying to be good about seeing who's coming off mute to kind of open the space for you. And then also just use the chat. Feel free to drop any questions you have in there. We'll try and answer them as they arise, or if we don't have an answer now, we'll try and find the answer or figure out who to connect you with. There's also the fun little reaction buttons. I've already seen a couple popping up, but we love seeing reactions. Helps really connect us in this space as presenters and with each other. Give us some hearts, give us some thumbs up. You can literally pick any emoji within the emoji library. We love it. Throw a random squid in there. I wouldn't be angry, you know? And then there, Sammy's gonna drop a link to SurveyMonkey. This is gonna be for after the training. We love your feedback. If you are seeking clock hours, you will do the survey in PD Enroller instead. But we like to drop the SurveyMonkey link so you have it available to you in case you have to pop off early. There, it's already up. Open it, minimize the browser, and then you just have it to do later. All right, I think that is it for my intros there. Ooh, and now is a great time. I'm already seeing popping things in the chat. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Oh, sorry, emergency vehicle. So if you can introduce yourself in the chat, your name, pronouns, role, organization or district you're joining from, and then I'm seeing a lot of whose land you're on in the chat. I'm loving it. If you haven't already introduced yourself with that, please also add whose land you're on. And we'll see who we got in the space here today. So So a quick little who we are as Building Changes. We've been in this space for a while now. Maybe we're new to some of you. I'm also seeing some familiar faces, but Building Changes is a statewide nonprofit working alongside communities to explore the intersections of systems serving young people, students, and families experiencing homelessness. Some of our work involves funding innovative ideas, providing technical assistance and training, project and program research and evaluation, and advocacy efforts that aim to change policies and strengthen implementation. A little bit of our mission, vision, values. Love this little Venn diagram kind of showing the intersections of our work with racial equity in the center. At Building Changes, we bring a targeted universalism lens coined by John A. Powell to our work. And this acknowledges equity rather than equality. So we no longer believe that everyone should receive the same level of support, but believe in prioritizing the needs of those most marginalized. So by doing so, there's a universal benefit. To be clear, this is not about preference. This is about acknowledging that people are situated differently and have varying needs. We've included this infographic to ensure that we are centering our students furthest from educational justice and access to resources and opportunities. So in some research that we did back in 2018, 2019, we found that 6 out of 10 students experiencing homelessness are students of color. And then how did we get here today? We've got a great partnership with OSPI. They brought us in through some American Rescue Plan funds, and we are delivering 7 training topics 4 times each over 2 years through September. And that's 28 trainings total. I think this might be training 21 or 22. So we're getting there, team. This is wild. We do have more trainings coming up, so we will make sure to share a link to that. And then a little bit about our agenda today. I'm going to start with just a McKinney-Vento overview. We're going to talk about the school system. That's why we're here today. And then we've got some great speakers to spotlight today, trying to really show examples of what's going on in our school system from the state level to the ESD level to the school level. I'm going to go to my next slide. Here's our objectives. These objectives are tied to clock hours and PD enrollment. And I think we're going to proceed. I'm going to pause before moving forward. Any questions or coming up for anyone real quick? All right, going to move forward. So we've got a Mentimeter, and hoping it works for us today. If you've been in trainings, you know I love Mentimeters, and sometimes they don't love me. So we're going to hope they love me today. We want to get a feel for who's in the room and what our connection to McKinney-Vento is today. So if you can follow that link that Samie just dropped, or go to menti.com and use the code at the top of the screen, you can answer this question. How familiar are you with McKinney-Vento services? And for my colleagues, if you are also following it and it's not, oh, it's working. Oh yeah. All right. So we're getting a spread of, got a fair bit of somewhat familiar. We got an expert in the room. Please, if we say something and you want to add to it, anyone, please do. And you've heard of it. This is a great example of why we do these trainings, because we know we have knowledge across all different levels in the room, and we want to make sure that we can all start in a similar place, as well as share the information with each other. Sweet. All right, and if you're like, McKinney who? That's okay. Welcome, we'll tell you who. My favorite is when I'm talking to my friends that are not in this field. I'm like, yeah, we're like McKinney-Vento. They're like, wait, blah, 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 who? So we're all about making sure everyone knows what McKinney-Vento is. All right, gonna move forward. Passing it to, I think, Samie.
My mom definitely calls it McKinney-Vento, and that makes me laugh. So sometimes it goes by that too, in my household. So just to get us plugged in for today, we're going to start with, I know for folks that are familiar or at expert level with McKinney-Vento, this will definitely be a little bit of review, but just a couple slides. So what is McKinney-Vento? The McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act is a federal law. It's going to focus on ensuring immediate enrollment and educational stability for children and young people experiencing homelessness in our school systems. So McKinney-Vento is designed to address barriers that these children and young people are facing in school, maybe in areas of enrolling, attending, and succeeding. Those are really some 3 focus areas, I would say, of McKinney-Vento. So on the right side of this slide, we have italicized that McKinney-Vento programs are built really to meet the needs of their districts. They look very different across the state. So every community has kind of a different way to McKinney-Vento based on the population they're serving. We know that the work is really dynamic. McKinney-Vento is not a predictable place in our school districts and often requires folks like you all with a really wide range of skills. We also know it takes a village to serve this student population. So leaning on your community resources and folks that you know to help this effort is definitely key. We also know staffing hardly ever matches up with the need for McKinney-Vento. This has been known widely as the most underfunded mandate that I've ever heard of, and that our state has really seen because we just see so many folks needing resources and services, and we don't always have the funds or the capacity to meet that need. So just want to be really kind of open and honest about that, but like I said, I may be definitely preaching to the choir here. This next slide is really going to go into eligibility. So McKinney-Vento defines homeless children or students as individuals who are lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. This slide's going to break that down further. Just think about this when you're identifying folks, whether you're a community-based provider or you're in the school district or buildings. Is that place permanent? It's not subject to change. It's predictable. It's also adequate and meets physical and psychological needs in their home environment. And then that last kind of little emblem is saying, can the student go to the same place every night and sleep in a safe and sufficient space? So this is just, think about how to help students and families you're serving to meet this criteria and be identified by your school districts to receive McKinney-Vento resources whenever you can. Again, we know the needs are high, and often the numbers we're seeing are lower than what they really are. So qualifying students really does take the whole community. And also remember, documentation should never be a barrier to accessing McKinney-Vento services.
Just want to highlight, I've dropped a couple links in the chat. We have a training that we call McKinney-Vento Deeper Dive that we have done 4 times, but you can find the training videos on our website if you would like to watch that and learn more. Shared a resource guide from OSPI, as well as more information to connect you with OSPI. They are a great resource when you are really going through kind of some of the details of McKinney-Vento and the kind of like, well, what about? A great resource to connect with them.
Then we're just going to highlight a couple key pieces about McKinney-Vento. Again, re-referencing really in place to address barriers or problems that children and young people experiencing homelessness may face in enrolling, attending, and succeeding in school. So highlighting school access, school stability, student-centered decision-making, so really focusing on the uniqueness of households and students themselves, support for academic success. There's a very critical role of your local homeless education liaison. Every district will have one. And then really thinking about community partnership and collaboration opportunities across these systems. So just like McKinney-Vento shows up different in districts, it also shows up different in school buildings. So every community has a way of kind of understanding what the best way is to work with students experiencing homelessness, as well as identifying them. We know student needs are very unique and often require a lot of creativity and a lot of advocacy on behalf of those support staff in districts and outside of them. And again, resources are limited and capacity and role limitations are real. For this next part, I am actually going to take it over to Kayla to get a little deeper into liaison role.
Thanks. And yeah, as Samie and Joey said, I know we have a ton of experts in the room and lots of wisdom in the room. So please come off mute. You can interrupt me, put it in the chat. We really value the communal wisdom here. So just wanted to give that invite. And just another quick overview. So the McKinney-Vento liaison, there's one for each district. And this is kind of the overreaching role that can help identify students and ensure that they can enroll in school and fully participate in school activities. The McKinney-Vento liaison also is responsible for training up the school staff at the school building level to ensure that when, say, a student shows up to school without, the required documentations to enroll, that they won't be turned away. And then in Washington State, we actually have a building point of contact at every school building. I will say, because this is so underfunded, sometimes the person appointed to be the building point of contact doesn't even know that they're the building point of contact. And so, it might be like tacked on to another role. But this is basically so there's someone at the school level that has a deeper relationship with the student or family and can communicate those needs to the McKinney-Vento liaison and help coordinate some of those services. And unaccompanied youth under McKinney-Vento is a youth who meets the definition of homelessness and is not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. A lot of times we tend to think that this is like high school age students who might have run away due to abuse or neglect in the home, or we know we have a high number of LGBTQ youth who, if they're not accepted by their family of origin, may run away for safety reasons. But I also want to just name that could be students of all ages who, for whatever reason, are not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian and are not in the formal foster care system. There are, other supports, of course, for young folks in foster care at the school level. But this really is just any youth, regardless of their age or grade, who's not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. And unaccompanied youth have lots of very specific needs, and in the link that was just dropped in the chat, then there's some resources about how to best support unaccompanied youth. But similar to any student who is eligible for McKinney-Vento services, unaccompanied youth have the right to immediately enroll without a parent or guardian. And typically they can enroll themselves and have some type of say in what school would be best for them. So whether they're couch surfing with friends or sleeping outside or sleeping in a youth shelter, they will be able to access their academic supports at the same level as their house peers. And just to reiterate, all students who are unstably housed have the right to immediate enrollment, regardless if they have, birth certificate or some identifying documents. Those are waived for young people who are experiencing homelessness. It can get a little tricky because McKinney-Vento law does not define immediate, but it does just say that it means without delay. And so, sometimes that can be a little tricky, but you can kind of leverage that language if you're running into roadblocks with the admissions office. Immediate enrollment also applies to publicly funded preschools if there's space. So this is a little bit of a gray area, but preschools and Head Start and early Head Start programs are by law required to kind of waive the requirements and allow young people to enroll if there's space, and to prioritize them on any wait lists if they are identified as McKinney-Vento eligible. And the way that students or families get connected to homeless support services are usually through a student housing questionnaire form at the school or district office or on the phone with the McKinney-Vento staff. Usually, depending on the district, then a McKinney-Vento staff will provide an eligibility intake and offer services at that time directly to the student or family. And identification, enrollment, transportation, and provisions of support are provided then. We know across the state, transportation has been a huge issue, as we heard in the chat earlier, even for housed folks, right? Like transportation to and from school has been really difficult after the pandemic. And so we have, heard a lot of folks experiencing delays on that transportation piece. But I would say continue to be a squeaky wheel with your district McKinney-Vento liaison and with the transportation department. I know some districts are coming up with some really creative solutions to make that possible. And then based on just if you're in a community-based organization, it's really vital to be in communication with the school team that's supporting the student that you are working with as well, to kind of break down some of those silos. For me, when I was working at a shelter, a lot of times this would look like accompanying a family to an IEP meeting, or getting involved if there was some discipline disputes or some disputes over, if the discipline decision was right or not. Leveraging the resources available to your organization and to build a team of support for the young people and the families that you are serving.
Now we're going to dive a little bit into the actual school building and or district. So what this is, a lot of text. Again, we'll definitely make sure you all get these slides after our training, but this is really a non-exhaustive list. It's not inclusive of all possible school partners, and some districts may not have some of these titles. But just because you don't see those titles does not mean they don't play a very important role. Just in that whole kind of in tune of it takes a village, like huge shout out to nurses, nutrition staff, janitorial staff, bus drivers. These are all key people in this system of identifying and supporting students experiencing homelessness. Also, some of the titles that we're seeing on this slide, some are building based, so some are in actual schools, and some really work at the district level or out of their central admin building. So just want to clarify that too. It also varies a lot by district. So what you're seeing on this slide, I'll just kind of break down really quick. So you have your principal, your administrator, that's really your leader of the school, with the main focus on teaching and learning for student achievement and school safety. Often you may have an assistant principal who's really partnering in that effort. Your school counselors focus on students' academic, social, emotional, and career success. So that could, be your family support social worker, or have a mix in a building of those roles. Oftentimes, I would say those key people are your McKinney-Vento building points of contact that Kayla's referenced. Some districts and buildings have instructional coaches or academic interventionists. You also have your ELL teachers, which are really acting as a cultural bridge and teach reading, speech, and writing, highlighting similarities and differences between different cultures, so that students are able to learn. And then down in the corner, your school registrar or secretary or office manager assists with enrollment, maintains student records, works with administration and other support staff. That role is wildly important, at least from my own experience as a McKinney-Vento liaison. They really are kind of your center of your work in a lot of ways, fielding those phone calls and organizing the different needs and ways to identify McKinney-Vento students is a huge job. That coordination piece is very important. So in our next slide, just going to go into a few more roles that you may see come up in districts. These are really important when considering immediate enrollment for student placement. Sometimes we aren't always aware of the extra supports and programs that are needed for these students. So some of these positions often move from building to building, or it really depends on your community. We don't always see these particular roles in every single building, even if it would be awesome if we could have the capacity and funds to be able to do so. So when we're talking about this is also an opportunity to advocate for students that you're working with. So maybe you feel that they aren't receiving the services that they should. You as an advocate do have the ability to ask for a recommendation and a referral to these different services. May not be able to connect directly with the actual person embedded in that district unless the family gives, rights to that student's access or information. But I would just say that these are just really important people that you should be aware of in case you have an opportunity to advocate. So breaking those down a little bit further, you have your occupational therapists, your physical therapists, speech and language pathologists, resource room teachers, school psychologists, and behavioral preventionists or interventionists. So we are not going to read word for word, but again, these slides will be shared, but we just want to kind of highlight those different folks in your school districts and buildings to play a really instrumental role in really meeting the needs of that whole student. And then in this next slide, so K through 12 resources and programs, again, maybe text is a little bit small, but what you're looking at is at the center in this blue circle, it says start with your child's teacher, but no, there is a multi-tiered system of support. So what these other circles around this blue circle represent are all the different resources and programs that are available to students in our K through 12 system. So just to highlight a few, special education, often referred to as SPED, is specially designed instruction that addresses the unique needs of a student eligible to receive special education services and is provided at no cost to parents and includes the related services a student needs to access his or her educational program. We have section 504, requires public schools to provide a free, appropriate public education to every student living with a disability, regardless of the nature or severity of that given disability. Under section 504, schools must provide students living with disabilities the accommodation, aids, and services they need to access and benefit from education equally with their peers. We also have career and technical education highlighted here, the high school and beyond plan to consider those post-secondary pathways, the learning assistance program, providing supplemental instruction and services to students who aren't meeting academic standards. We also have Title I Part A, which is a federal program designed to provide all children significant opportunity to receive a fair, equitable, and high quality education, and to really focus on closing educational achievement gaps. So just want to say, no, that's a lot of content, but just want to be really, really mindful of all the different pieces, resources, and programs that we see in our K through 12 system and really highlight some of those, as we've already mentioned, so that you can really best advocate for students experiencing homelessness. And then this next slide is just really saying, you know, advocacy and partnerships are really important, are really powerful, and it really starts with you as a parent, as a family, as a community member. And these folks in these three bottom boxes are all different avenues that you can take to advocate on behalf of the students and families that you're working with, whether it's really kind of in that building level with your teacher, with counselors, with school support staff, or the principal. You can also speak to school district staff or you know, folks at the superintendent level of things in the administrative building. And then there's also your school board, who, if you are continuously seeing concerns that you really want to be an advocate for on behalf of students experiencing homelessness, these are all people that need to hear from you. So just wanted to highlight that as well. And then I believe my last slide for this little piece is going to show a really beautiful map. So we're lucky to have folks joining from the Puget Sound Education Service District 121. This is just a beautiful representation of the different educational service districts across Washington State. And really, this is how we can think about work happening at a regional level. But what I don't want to do is claim any expertise in this particular area, especially when we're so lucky to have two folks that happen to hold that expertise, I believe, today. So I'm going to pass it off to Joey, and we're going to transition into talking a little bit more and learning a little bit more about educational service district work.
Thank you, Samie. So before I introduce our next set of speakers, I do just want to pause. That was a lot of information. And at a very, you know, trying to give you a lot of details, but just want to pause. Does anyone have any questions or things that come up? We can take a moment or two to respond to any of those if anything has come up, or if you have anything you would like to add. All right, not seeing any unmuting or hands coming up or popping up in the chat. So then I'm gonna continue and introduce our next group. All right, so we are super excited to be joined with speakers from the Puget Sound Educational Service District, PSESD. So many acronyms in this work, y'all know it. So that is ESD 121. And with that, I'm gonna pass it off to Angelica.
So thank you everyone for being here. We have, I think the most important piece of all this presentation is our Community Wisdom Council. I'm just going to talk briefly about who we are at the PSESD and a program or a project that has been going on for a couple of years now. And so we hope that, we can see, as you see, real changes. For this means more human experiences, safe experiences, but more than anything, that we are involved in key decisions that impact us. And this was a quote from a community conversations report that we did in 2021. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide. And so today we want to just really kind of put plant some seeds about what does it look like and feel like to have an equitable and impactful community and school partnership. We want to know, for you to have wonderings about what do you all see as collaborative partnerships. And today we're going to really talk about how our Community Wisdom Council is creating space for community. Today we have several of our Community Wisdom Council members with us. And a little bit later, I'll have them introduce themselves because I think it's so important for you to know, like, who is in this space around the Community Wisdom Council. We have Jacquetta McGowan, Mary Fertakis, Maribel Paniagua, Dante Pollard, Delhia Winbush, Leila Crist, and Lily Castro. So I'll have them introduce themselves in a little bit. Next slide, please. And so our role in the community ecosystem as an ESD, there's 9 educational service districts, as you saw in that map. We partner with K-12, with the districts, with the 35 school districts that we serve. We also are an innovation hub to support districts. As you see, there's a lot of things that we strive to do. But our own Puget Sound ESD is committed to becoming an anti-racist, multicultural organization. And I wish I had more time so we could talk about what does that all mean. And we try to foster transformational relationships with the sovereign nations, Black and Indigenous people of color, youth, families, and communities. We aim to eliminate opportunity gaps and really want to just create racially just and humanizing school systems. And we want to implant in our DNA to be an anti-racist organization. Next slide, please. So at the ESD, there's many programs, departments, it's, if you really ever walk into the ESD, it's like a cubicle land. It's huge and there's a lot of really work happening. We had this transformational collaborative that started, it was, how did it begin and who participates, right? So May in 2020, a request from existing superintendent collaboratives. I don't know if many of you remember, there was Race to the Top about 10 years ago. And out of that, in the roadmap region, the superintendents were collaborating on this huge grant. And then that went away, it sunsetted. And then the superintendents were like, we still want to get together and still want to continue to work so we can really create some regional impact. So from that request and the persistence of being focused on racially just and humanizing school systems, it's how this PSD began. And so who participates? Superintendents, executive directors, decision makers, ESD staff, community-based leaders, as you will see the Community Wisdom Council in a little bit, but also parent and youth representatives. And so with that, we'll move to the next slide. And this will pass it on to Jacquetta, but I'd like for everyone, if as I call you, because I think I see who is here, if you want to introduce yourselves, just say, a minute about who you are and maybe why you're on the Wisdom Council, and then we'll send it on to Jacquetta. So we'll start with you, Jacquetta.
Hello, everyone. I am Jacquetta McGowan, part of co-lead for the Community Wisdom Council. Sorry for the background noise. I am spaced with my niece, who she's supposed to be in class, but she's watching her little phone. So that's the noise that you hear in the background. So sorry for that, but it's who I am.
Thank you.
I will pass it off to Delhia if I can.
Yes.
Yes, that's fine. Good morning. My name is Delhia Winbush, and I am one of the parents that sit with the CWC, show up as a legally blind disabled woman, parent of a highly abled disabled child, and love doing the work of really changing, or as I call it, moving the needle on the way that districts in education see our children with disabilities. And I'll pass it off to Mary.
Thanks, Delhia. I'm Mary Fertakis. I'm a former school board member in Tukwila and currently serve on the State Board of Education. So I come into this space as a learner and also someone with the opportunity to impact policy, to be highlighting issues like the ones we're talking about and ensuring that we're eliminating barriers for every one of our students. And Angelica, who should I pass it off to?
So Maribel?
Yes. Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Maribel Paniagua. I'm the family engagement specialist for the Riverview School District. And just one thing to share, we had a family night last night, and it was so cool. I just want to share a picture about it. Well, maybe you cannot see, but so there were some of the families. We were celebrating Children's Day. Sorry. Well, I think that's the only one I can share right now, but it was so much fun. We were eating tamales, kids were with adults, so it was so much fun. So I'm still recovering from last night.
Thank you, Maribel. Dante?
Hi, Dante. I feel like being a male single father working with the CWC, it's like I get to see both sides of the spectrum, because I'm a dad, and I don't do a lot of the stuff that the moms do. So it's like just being a part of seeing what they do, and how I've grown a lot I've grown and learned a lot about how to communicate with one another, with each other and stuff. So sorry,
Thank you. Thank you, Dante. And Leila?
Yeah, I can go. Hi, I'm Leila Crist. I'm a program coordinator at PSESD, and I provide administrative support to the Community Wisdom Council and to PSTC, and probably a bunch of other acronyms as well. But yeah, happy to be here.
And Leila says she's the support. She actually is a member. She participates, she contributes, and we so appreciate her being there. And that last but not least, Lily?
Good morning. I'm sorry, I'm a little sick. My name is Lily Castro. I am a mother of 3, member of the Wisdom Council, but I also work in a school district. And I've been a member of the Community Wisdom Council for, I believe, around 3 years now. And one of the highlights that I can share with you is I was blessed in supporting the work of the Youth Community Conversations report, and I interview students, and we had really honest conversations. And this was around, staff of color in schools, and are they thriving or not? So it was so interesting to hear from their perspective, how they see through their eyes the same world that we live in, but definitely in a different filter.
So I think that's everyone from the Community Wisdom Council that came today. So I just wanted to share a little bit about who they were, just because so you can get an understanding of what a blessing it is to have them, because they actually are part of our transformational collaborative. As a Community Wisdom Council, they come and to inform. So they get to be in front of superintendents. They get to be in front of these executive decision makers. And so they get to provide the perspective, not just as you saw, multiple variety of diversity from all sides. So it's just a blessing to work with them. And I get to co-lead with Jacquetta. Actually, they're all leaders in the group. We just get the chance to help create agendas and move them forward. But with that, I'll pass it over to Jacquetta.
Thank you, Angelica. And I was just gonna say that the slide has been up there, so I don't know if you guys have all read it, but just to kind of reiterate it. So we are members of the community, we are parents, and we join in that space as a family. We do not, whatever titles we have, they are thrown out the door. We are a family when we join, when we come together. So most of the time when I start out, I ask the audience to smile, because even though we are doing this work, we still need to see each other smile. We need to uplift each other. And so that's how we start our meetings. And just want to point out that the space was female dominated for a couple of years until just now. So just happy to say that we have pulled in a few male parents, and I'm trying to compete with her. So I'm sorry, you guys, I'm losing words because I'm competing with her. But we brought in male, and I'm going to say role model figures, because that's what they are. And so we're just so excited that males have joined our group and have become family with us. And so I am going to go ahead on and pass it back to Angelica.
Next slide, please. So we'll talk a little bit about our journey in the transformational collaborative. So we started in 2021, and it was built on the foundations to be inclusive, healthy, and sustainable, and in partnership with our Community Wisdom Council. So it was huge around building relationships, really uplifting priority areas. And then when we moved into, we used to call them phases, but now it's really our journey, because it's not going to end. So in 2021-22, continue to build community. We actually invited and supported Shoreline School District with their ongoing family advocacy, and Riverview School District, and Maribel Paniagua from the River School District. We snatched her, and I said, you need to be part of this group, because we're really trying to support especially our leaders of color in different spaces, and leaders who are doing the work on the ground, but really are sometimes the only ones doing the work. So we said, here we have a community, how can we support you? So we invited her in, and she's been such a great, an amazing addition from that district, because she kind of informs us as to what's happening out there. That way we can support her and inform her of some of the ideas that we all have to support. So it's like Dante was saying, and Jacquetta, we're all just a family. We're figuring out how to support one another so we can create that sustainable change. So in 2022-23, in the year we are in, we're committed to continue being courageous and trailblazers in this learning. We continue to model the way as to how do we really create these partnerships they're really families, where we are always centering families, students, especially uplifting our students and families and communities of color. So this year, we invited 4 cross-team district teams to join us, and each of them work on one of the priority areas that you will see. So next slide, please. And so there was a couple of main functions of the Puget Sound Transformational Collaborative. One of them was really to transform ourselves, to transform our systems. So we started with the wheel and really looking at and even guiding, like, where do you see yourself you're at now and where do you want to strive to be? So the next slide. And so the other key function was to really organize the key systems to drive the work that is happening. So there was 4 opportunities of action that our districts could take. One was around racial equity policy and practice connections. The other one was support for educators of color, family school partnerships, and youth leadership and community-based organization partnerships. And it was all to improve the educational conditions and well-being of our Black and Brown educators and youth in our schools. And based on all of this, we were able to really, the Community Wisdom Council, and at the same time when all this started, we had a Youth Wisdom Council that started. So actually the Youth Wisdom Council also attends our PSTCs. They also have Elevating Youth of Color, Voice, and Leadership sessions with the district. So they actually, the youth lead, just like our Community Wisdom Council leads, so do our youth in those spaces. So next slide, please. And we can talk about our successes so far, and I'll hand it back to Jacquetta.
Sorry, Delhia will be helping with this slide. Delhia,
Okay.
you're up. Okay, I'll just read the first one. Introduction of Community Wisdom Council is one of our successes so far.
And with that, it would, the development of that, of the introduction, really emphasized our trusting relationships.
Sessions co-designed by parent and ESD leaders.
Which includes cross-system connections to all the work that's happening.
And led into the partnership support for less resource districts.
And with that, the development of the playbook of learning and action recommendations was developed. And I want to again just emphasize the amazing opportunity that we had to work with Leila, because Leila was the one really driving a lot of creating some of these playbooks. And without her, a lot of these things wouldn't happen. So again, thank you to Leila. And our last one.
Feedback loops on work with youth and families.
Awesome. Next slide, please. And here you see some of the quotes. These are voices from our Puget Sound Transformational Collaborative community. So it's given some of the quotes where it's given me the courage and also tools, approaches to continue to move the work forward, which we have done in my district with much more to come. Seeing the power of community members sharing their wisdom and how the district folks are so willing to learn from and with parents and community. It has taught me that others do care about the work and care about the future of students. It gives me energy to keep going and to keep fighting for what is right. And the last one, I've really appreciated hearing how to capture feedback and experiences from families and students in a more meaningful way that avoids reinventing trauma on display without any application of what they share. Next slide, please. And Jacquetta, this goes back to you.
And Mary will help with this slide.
Okay, thank you, Jacquetta. So one of the things that we have that is really important to us is how we show up. And every time we meet, we have a gracious space that we start with, and we connect with each other on a personal level, because it's important to recognize that when we're showing up in these rectangles, we're bringing a lot with us. And so focusing on the relationship building and helping it, being family and being supportive really helps us then set aside those other things so we can be present for the time that we're together. We've shared a lot of our stories. I really appreciate the prompts that Jacquetta and our other leaders put together for us to really, think. But I've learned so much about everyone with our stories that we have, and they're all amazing, unique, wonderful people. We don't spend time admiring the problem. We are all pretty aware of what they are, and the importance of that qualitative experience, the people side, not just the numbers. So we tend to center the relationships and the personhood side of this, and then bring in the numbers so that we're humanizing and centering the people who are behind the numbers in what we do. And then finding that balance between healing and movement. Like I said, that this first part and the way we structure how we get together really helps with the healing piece. And it's been really an awesome thing to be a part of, so that we can all support each other, and we take turns being the one helping with the healing and the one who needs some healing in the space.
Thank you, Mary and Jacquetta and everyone. Next slide, please. So first, we want to thank Joey for inviting us, and everyone at Building Changes for inviting us to share a little bit about our Community Wisdom Council. And I'm thankful for our Community Wisdom Council members for taking the time to be here out of your busy days. I'm just thankful to be able to share some of their experiences. And so we have a couple minutes left, maybe one or two, if anybody has any questions for us.
Well, folks are thinking of it can be a question, it can be a reflection from what you heard from this incredible group today. I just want to give my real heartfelt thank you to all of you for coming into our space today, for sharing who you are and what you do. I think it is just incredible that we have such a powerful group of folks working to better our schools for our students and families and those who work in them. So y'all are awesome. I'm just like, I knew that we invited a cool group of people, but I didn't realize like how cool y'all were until you started sharing your stories and joined us in this space. So yeah, just thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Joey, and to thank everyone for also listening to our stories. And if it's okay with you all, we want to stay for those that can and just learn alongside of you all. And so we're just thankful for this opportunity as well.
Absolutely. Please stay, come join our training, come to this one, come to the next one, come to all of them. Like we come to our school housing network, like come to all of our things. We want you there. Y'all are great. So I'm not seeing any like major questions pop in the chat. Kind of one thing I want to highlight is, we've got ESDs across the state. Not every ESD has this beautiful group, right? The Community Wisdom Council is at the PSESD. And that doesn't mean that there is not a similar group at your ESD, or that a similar group couldn't start, right? This is why we learn from each other. This is why we share what we're doing across the state. So then we can see what are the really cool things that other folks are doing and how can we bring that into our own communities. So I just, again, thank you all for joining us today. If folks are interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to me. I can connect you with Angelica and we can get that connection going so you can learn more about maybe starting a Community Wisdom Council in your community.
And I was just going to say that we are actually very blessed at ESD 121 is that we are the only ESD in the state that has a Community Wisdom Council and a Youth Wisdom Council. And if you want to know more and even how to start one, we have the amazing wisdom from these ladies who are, some of them original, who started with us from the get-go. And let me tell you, it hasn't been without a struggle. It's not always easy, but we had growing pains and we overcame those, and here we are. We're still up and running. So, and I won't take any more time, but thank you again. Thank you.
Well, beautiful. So again, I'm gonna try and go around the screen and thank each of you individually. And if I miss someone, I'm sorry. So Angelica, thank you. Mary, thank you. Jacquetta, thank you. Maribel, thank you. Delhia, thank you. Dante, thank you. Lily, thank you. And Leila, thank you. I think that's all of you. And if I miss someone, I'm so sorry. You're a big group. All right, so this ends the first half of our training today, and we are going to be moving into a quick break before we come back for our next speaker. So it is currently, oh, that date is wrong. Sorry, that's embarrassing. Didn't change that on that slide, didn't catch it. So it is currently 10:57. I'm going to say let's return at, let's give ourselves like a 10:58 now. We're going to return at 11:03. Let's do 5-minute break. Come back at 11:03, and we will get rolling with our next speaker. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. All right, it is 11:03. If you can start returning to the space. I realized I forgot to hit pause on the recording, so if anyone is watching this in the future, I'm sorry for that 5-minute pause that you have to fast forward through. All right. If you can show me you have returned by either turning on your camera, throwing a reaction up on your screen, or telling me I'm here in the chat. Excited to welcome you all back to the space. All right, seeing some hearts and celebrations, seeing some beautiful faces. Oh, a panda, yes. Love it. All right. Getting a wave, this is great. A cow, oh my goodness. Sunflower, that's my favorite flower by far. Was that a koala I just saw, or did I miss it? I love the a rainbow, the creative functions we can get here. All right. So I'm gonna take all of the beautiful welcomes that I just saw and take it as we are ready to roll into our next section. So with that, I am going to very excitedly introduce our next speaker. So we are moving now to an example of resources at the state level. So I'm going to be introducing Yordanos from the Washington State Governor's Office of the Education Ombuds, OEO for short. That's quite the title, but I will hand it off to Yordanos to introduce more.
Thank you, Joey. It is quite the title. I often just joke and say it's a paragraph of a title. It's long, but OEO, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Yordanos, Gebreamlak, she, her pronouns. And I will be sharing some information about OEO today. We often share names and maybe contact info about resources, but the details that seem little, what happens when you call can often feel big if you're unfamiliar with a resource. I am always the one that's like, what happens when I call though? Or what happens after I send off an email to this place, then what? So I'll be sharing a little bit of that, and then also just sharing some common questions and concerns that come into our office with you all today. And I would just say, don't hesitate whatsoever to just ask questions in this space after I'm done sharing, but then also reaching out and being like, can you repeat that one part again? Please feel free to do so. I do want to first start out with a visual description of myself. We do visual descriptions so that everyone is included in this space. There might be folks who can't see the screen, maybe calling from a phone, maybe due to disability, maybe due to some other factor altogether. So I am a Black female with curly hair. I am wearing purple glasses, and I have on a white blazer that's currently open with a light pink shirt underneath. I'm sitting, and behind me there is a light gray wall, and on the wall you can see, not fully, but there is a picture of a map with flags of different countries towards the end of the picture of the map. And I am showing up in this space as a disabled person as well. So OEO, next slide. Thank you. So OEO is a statewide agency that was created in 2006 by the legislator to work collaboratively with schools, families, different state agencies, and just stakeholders in public K-12 education to help reduce the opportunity gap. No one person can do it alone. No one office can do it alone. I would say that we mostly hear from caregivers in our office, but really lots of different folks call. We hear from educators who are looking for a brainstorming partner, from superintendents, from folks who work in healthcare, or folks who work at DCYF, just a whole range of folks about maybe some questions or concerns about a student in public K-12. And then we'll work collaboratively so that students have a right to education. And on this slide, I'm going to actually minimize, as lovely as your faces are, I'm going to minimize some boxes here so I can see my full screen. 1 second. Okay. On this slide, on the right-hand side of the slide, there are pictures. There's a picture of folks with their cap and gowns. You can see someone with the cap and gown on. There are folks who are holding up in the air and some smiling faces in the photo. Next slide. So OEO answers, as I mentioned before, questions about K-12 public education. Sometimes we'll brainstorm with folks, and I'll get deeper into what that work looks like in a minute. But I do want to share that we, if it's a question or concern about a particular topic, and we're talking about public school, and we're talking about within Washington State, then anyone can call. I did hear mention earlier, which I appreciate. I think it was you, Joey, who mentioned about prioritizing support. And that makes sense, right? We have, we talk about disproportionality, but then we don't always prioritize support. And in 2020, OEO moved from issues-based strategic plan to really naming communities. And on the right hand of the slide, there is a list of populations who are part of our current strategic plan. And I will read it out loud. It's super duper small. But I just want to highlight that anyone can absolutely call. We do, however, prioritize our very limited resources where we engage in conflict resolution to communities within our strategic plan. So that list is students who are out of school, including disabled students who are on partial days. I do want to make a clarification here about the partial days piece, because sometimes caregivers and schools will come together and collaboratively work out a plan that might be in the best interest of the student that is a partial day situation, right? So maybe a student will be attending school partially because there are some services that will happen in the home or services that will happen at a facility. And this is planning that was collaboratively done and agreed upon. So I needed to highlight that when we're talking about issues that arise concerning partial days, these are situations where, let's say a parent hears from a school, we've got limited resources and we're going to educate your kid 3 times a week. Sorry about it, right? Those are the kind of situations that we're talking about when we name partial days. Also, people of color, Black or Indigenous communities experiencing homelessness in kinship or foster care, involved with the juvenile legal system or juvenile rehabilitation system, immigrant, refugee, asylee, migrant, or students or families whose primary language is other than English. Also, students receiving WISE, which is wraparound with intensive services, or CLIP, children in long-term inpatient. One other thing to note here too is sometimes someone might reach out to our office and let's say they do fit within the strategic plan, but they communicate, I just need to know a quick answer to this quick question that I have, or I just need help locating contact information for someone in my school community or district community. And so they'll be explicit about, this is just this quick information that I need. We don't necessarily have to assign a case to that. We can provide that support quickly at intake, but I'll share a little bit more on the next slide, if we can go to the next slide, about casework. So our services are free. We are an independent resource and it is confidential. So anything you share with us absolutely stays with us. If I were to put the work that we do into 3 buckets, it would be casework, outreach and training, and then policy work. let's start with casework. There is support through information, again, brainstorming, like I mentioned earlier, maybe even some referral information, sharing of toolkits, that sort of thing that can happen at the intake level. And this is where I was saying, just because someone is part of a community that's within our strategic plan, we don't necessarily need to assign if what they're asking for is quick information at intake. Sometimes, though, there is a whole lot more happening. Maybe there's a breakdown in communication, or just a breakdown in trust, or something that just needs more than real quick information at the intake level, and that's within our strategic plan. Then that's where we can assign to a senior on buds. And I'll get deeper into that as well a little bit later. So that's kind of casework. Two branches of casework. There's that information and support at the intake level, and then there is potential case assignment to a senior on buds. With trainings, folks will reach out to us and request workshops on different topics related to K-12 public education. It could be attendance and truancy, what are rights and responsibilities there. It could be seeking information about discipline, or harassment, intimidation, and bullying. One that I've done quite a bit is about the special education process. So sharing information about, what makes an IEP different from a 504. I'm hearing, these two things used interchangeably. I think they're different, but I'm not sure, right? What can you expect when you request an evaluation, that sort of thing? That's one where we get a request for quite a bit. And I know that I, and along with my other teammates, have done it a lot. But they can be anything really. And we get these requests from sometimes school districts, sometimes state agencies, sometimes community-based organizations, parent support groups, just a wide range of folks who will reach out and request that workshop. And then policy work, this is really key for us. Policy work, sometimes we seek out opportunities. Let's say we're seeing things in our work and it's, what policy group can we connect with to share what's really, really happening for our students and our families and our educators and folks who work in the school system. In addition to providing recommendation on annual report, we do sit on different policy committees. Again, sometimes we're seeking those out ourselves. Other times we're mandated to be on a policy committee or work group. But it becomes critical for us because it gives us an opportunity to share what's happening versus us kind of talking theoretical. This is what's on quote unquote paper. So it gives us a chance to just share what's happening actually on the ground. Next slide, please. So working with OEO, there are different ways that folks can reach out to us, from picking up the phone and calling us, email, or reaching out online. With the online piece, we do have an online intake, and it is currently being translated in some more languages. Our website itself is translated in, I believe, 23 languages, don't quote me, 22 to 24 languages and counting. We'll be continuing to build that out. And we'll be doing the same for our online intake. Our online intake is available in less languages at the moment, but we're working on that. So folks will reach out by, calling or emailing or filling out the online intake, or even scheduling booking, so we can kind of cut down on the phone tag piece. But however it is that the person reaches out, we'll connect and take some information, listen to the questions and concerns that come up. We do complete an intake with all of our calls. And again, this is information that's for us and stays with us. And we'll either provide, quick information and resources, or if it is falling within that strategic plan, then we would schedule that time with a senior on buds to just understand more about the issue and work together in figuring out how to resolve concerns, so that student is feeling okay in every sense of the word, excuse me. We can work with a case for up to 120 days per year per student. Sometimes it takes far less, but we do have that capacity to work to up to 120 days to try and get some sort of resolution. Here's what I want to share about the 120 days piece, because, sometimes, let's say, just as a tangible example, you've reached out, right? We've worked together. We've come to some sort of resolution. And then let's say within the same academic year, and let's just say it's 3 or 4 months down the line, same academic year, student is no longer in school for whatever that reason is, whether it's unresolved bullying, whether it's, an expulsion, whatever that reason is, whether there's been a gap in communication for a family who's experiencing homelessness, whatever that reason is, please don't hesitate to call. If a student is not connected to school, we will kind of evaluate that situation and figure it out together. So I guess the short message here is, when in doubt, just call anyway, and we'll figure out what we can do, whether that is a case assignment to a senior ombuds, whether it is support at our intake level with an associate ombuds, we'll figure it out. I mentioned earlier that we don't share information with anyone. Everything is confidential. If we have a written permission, then we can reach out to, say, someone in our school communities or someone in the district to work on a case that we have open with our office. We can sometimes attend meetings. We do this virtually. We are a team of currently 9 people working statewide. And out of the 9 co-workers 9 of us total, so I guess 8 co-workers and then me, we've got 3 senior education ombuds working statewide, and we have 2 associate ombuds who are managing our intake and case triage. So a lot of our work is done remotely. So on those occasions when we are attending a meeting, we're oftentimes on Teams or Zoom or calling in for workshops and to do outreach and stuff. Those sometimes are more in person, but also can be done remote. But when it comes to casework, just about all of it is done remotely. And then sometimes resolution looks like clarifying concerns or sharing options, whether those options are informal or whether we're sharing some options for resolving a situation more formally. Our office, we're not an enforcement agency. The work that we do is through informal conflict resolution. But if the resolution can't come within our support, our scope, then we can and do share information about formal dispute resolution options available to folks. Next slide. On the screen are some common questions and concerns that come into our office. We get, and I'll read these out loud, but what I'll say is we get calls about like athletics, you name it, academic progress concerns. Maybe someone wants a brainstorm apartment. Did I just say apartment? I'm moving soon, so you know what's on my mind. Brainstorming partner about advocacy. I mean, it could really be issues. The questions can really range, but here are some really common ones. Year after year, the number one is special education for our office. In our annual report so let's see, we're 2022, 2023 school year right now. So 2021, 2022, we saw the percentage shrink for special education, and some other issues took up a little bit more room, but special education still continues to be number one, and it was also for last year. So with respect to special education, questions about evaluation, IEP development, reviews of behavior plans, and this is not to say that a student needs to receive services through an IEP to have a behavior plan, but we often do get the questions about behavior intervention plans in relation to a student who's receiving special education services. Student discipline is another one. So rights to notice, limits on removal, rights to appeal, and access to educational services when a student is not in school. Harassment, bullying, that's another big one. And we saw a huge rise. Schools were reporting this, families were reporting this, and HIB-related concerns when we were looking at our data from last school year. So this one, the harassment, intimidation, bullying, discriminatory harassment often comes up. Applicable procedures, points of contact in schools and districts, safety plans, and strategies for preventing and responding. And one thing too that I'll also note here is something that we saw and we did report about in last year's annual report is sort of like this continued missed opportunities of honoring the experiences of students who bullying is terrible, period, right? But when it comes to discriminatory harassment, we do have policies and procedures to help us guide in how we deal with that and those situations being ignored. So when a student was being bullied based off a protected class, these issues not being treated as such came up over and over again. And then other questions, enrollment and transportation. This comes up a lot with our students experiencing homelessness when there's gaps in communication or there are just a lack of a direct line of communication. So this comes up quite a bit. And then attendance also, I would say. Rights to notice, strategies for supporting attendance and the Beckle bill process, really getting creative of, what does it look like to maybe shift a student schedule? What does it look like to really get to the bottom of what's happening that's keeping a student away? And then language access, so right to interpretation and translation of specific documents. And it's really encouraging to see that when we think about language access, we are moving away from just thinking about, like spoken language, but we're also talking about, Braille, right? Like communication disability or really honoring requests for ASL interpretation, closed captioning, CART services, that sort of thing. And language access, both for caregivers who are navigating the school system in support of their student or students, and also for youth themselves. Next slide. On this slide, so on the right, there is a screenshot of a page on our website where there are just a lot of resources. Specifically, the example that's on this slide is about discipline information, but you can kind of see the list of the different topics, so special education, discipline, athletics, all of these different topics. And so this is just giving a screenshot of what you would expect to see as you're navigating our website. There are short toolkits on our site. There are also longer resources on there. And when I say long, I mean long, like 60 to 70 pages. What we hope will be helpful, though, is that the table of contents, and I believe for all of the long ones, are framed in the form of questions. So it makes it a little bit easier to locate information. But you can always just reach out to us too, and we can talk through a situation. Next, I think this is the last slide. It sure is. So on this slide is our contact information, and it just says, stay in touch with OEO. Our website is on here, and Joey, will we be sharing this? I'll also read it aloud too, but I hope that we can also share. So on the left hand of the slide, it's got our website, which is www.oeo.wa.gov. It's got our main email, which is oeoinfo, so oeoinfo@gov.wa.gov. And it's got our toll-free number, which is 1-866-297-2597. And we do have access to interpreter services. What we share with folks when we're doing outreach or, workshops on specific topics is if the person who needs to communicate with us through an interpreter only leaves the name of the language in the voicemail, for example, like let's say we're on the other line, voicemail is left, the only thing left is the name of the language. We'll call back with an interpreter in that language, provided that the number isn't blocked. So please feel free to share that with others. And then on the right-hand side of this slide is our social media pages. So we do have 2 Facebook pages, one in English and one in Spanish. And I'll also read the links to the social medias. So for Facebook, it's www.facebook.com/WA Education Ombuds. And then for Spanish, www.facebook.com/Ombuds de Educación. And then Twitter, which we are trying to get better at Twitter. We haven't been tweeting as much, but we're getting there. We are at ED Ombuds on Twitter. And that is it for me. And I am more than happy to answer any questions for folks.
Thank you so much, Yordanos. Your office is such an important resource, and I really appreciate the way that you have highlighted what you're able to offer and support our students and families and the educators and those who are supporting them.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
So we do have a moment before our next speaker. If anyone has a quick question for Yordanos, we can also connect you after this. Again, the slides will be shared out, so you will have the emails, the phone numbers, everything that is on the slides will be accessible to you via email and in PDF form that hopefully makes it easier to read through. I'm not seeing any questions pop up in the chat or hands being raised, so I'm going to move to our next speaker. And with that, we're going to an example of resources at the school level, and I'll pass it to Kayla.
Thanks, Joey, and thank you, Yordanos. I'm really excited to introduce an incredible advocate who just so happens to also be one of my closest friends. So I'm excited to introduce Adana Abakporo, who works at the Lake Washington School District. And Adana, first, we would just love to have you tell us about yourself. Who are you and what is your role?
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Joey. And thank you to everyone that's here. Hopefully all of you are doing well. So my name's Adana Abakporo, she, her pronouns. I actually work for Lake Washington School District in Redmond, Washington in the East Lake Learning Community. So specifically for my role, I work in the equity department, and I get to work with different schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and high schools in the East Lake Sammamish area. And so that's about, I want to say that's about like 13 schools, which are both public and choice schools, which are smaller schools. And I get to do a plethora of different things. One thing that I love doing is I get to go to these different schools, collaborate with admin and staff on how we can make sure that our families and students are being well supported and effectively supported in our schools. So that is, working primarily with them, with also working with counselors too on different resources that maybe our students need. For example, if our students are low income, if our students are in McKinney-Vento, if our kids are experiencing traditional housing, or if our students are experiencing, disengagement in their learning, or, for variety of reasons, right? Or if they just need to have an advocate for them, right? And that's where I come in. So essentially, it's like my role is to help bridge the gap between what families and students need and what the schools can provide. And so when it comes to making sure that we are providing that inclusivity and that belonging with our students and families, I also, facilitate trainings and workshops with the help of my equity department. And when it comes to just various different topics on equity. So that's anything from learning about how to have courageous conversations about race with our staff, with our admin, with our students and families. When it comes to learning about gender identity, when it comes to learning about how we can make sure we're supporting our BIPOC students with disabilities, understanding more about culture appropriation versus culture appreciation. So various different topics that, not only for professional learning, but also learning that, when we talk to our students and when we talk to our families. When it comes to doing that as well, oftentimes you find out, not only where people are at with their journey, like the equity journey, but also trying to figure out, because of that, how can we make sure we're not only educating them, the staff, admin, teachers, and everyone in between, but also making sure that we're providing education for our students and for our teachers. And so for me, I try to make sure too that with the help of my equity department, we try to figure out, if students who are in low income or who are in transitional housing, what kind of supports do they need? So vouchers, for example, we provide vouchers for our students, and we have the help from our counselors figuring out who those students are, right? And we deliver those to our schools, so that way we can make sure we deliver to our students and their families. We're also making sure that we have students who may need supports in with clothing. We know we have, baby corner, where we support making sure that students and families can have those supplies as well, for those same reasons, if they need support in that, as well as just trying to make sure that they have the opportunity to ensure that they can talk with us. And when I say us, I mean all the adults in the schools, but also with me too, if they need support. And that also includes, having student support groups, having student programming. So I also support and co-advise different student affinity spaces, such as, co-advising the Black Student Union at one of my high schools, supporting our Black student groups in a couple of our middle schools, and just providing that safe haven, the connection, that community that is needed in other predominantly white schools for the most part, right? And so with our Black students, it's really important for them, especially because it allows for them to kind of get away from those pressures of being in school, being in classes all day, maybe not being able to see their friends on a day-to-day, unless, they're playing sports or they're in different clubs, but having that affinity space to allow for them to have that time too. And being able to talk about issues that may be very difficult to talk about if you're non-Black or if you are from a different community, right? And so when it comes to racism, when it comes to ableism, when it comes to, sexual gender identity, it's important for these Black students to be able to have that space. And so I support that as well. And so I know there's a lot to say at the moment, but I just want to let y'all know, just get that feel, that, broad range of what I do. But those are the main different things. And just, again, allowing students and families to feel like we are there for them, to support them as much as we can.
Thank you. I know that you do so much on the school level and at the district level as well. Could you speak a little bit to how, what it looks like supporting families experiencing housing instability, or how you coordinate with the McKinney-Vento department to support those?
Yeah. So for me, what I try to do is, one thing I love with my job is being able to talk with those students in particular. I get referrals, or I just talk with the counselors and I ask them, are there any students that you feel that need that support, that may need another advocate, or who may be going through some different types of issues that we may not be even knowing about? And so that's when they'll tell me about the student. And then if there are students who are dealing with, transitional housing or homelessness, that's when I talk to my McKinney-Vento liaison on my department. And what we do is her and I, talk more about what the student needs, what their families need in particular. And then oftentimes she will then, set up a meeting with the counselor, with the student's counselor, with the parent. And sometimes I'm involved because I know the student, or sometimes it's just the McKinney-Vento liaison and the student and their families. And it's great because too, our McKinney-Vento liaison is also Spanish speaking. And so there's also sometimes there's also a language barrier there. So with her, she's able to, provide that connection piece too of being able to speak in their home language, and rather it being a very difficult conversation if it's in English, especially if they don't speak English. And so once that happens, then she is able to figure out if they need transportation. So some of our students too that McKinney-Vento may need transportation support. And so trying to make sure she can connect with either the bus department, transportation department, or if there's a need of maybe even trying to get them an Uber, to school. So we have some students who sometimes take Ubers to go to school, to or from school. So we have that. For example, if there's a student who may need support in in trying to figure out different traditional housing supports, then that's how we talk with the McKinney-Vento liaison, and we also talk to our community outreach coordinators on our team to see what are some resources around the Redmond or Eastlake or Kirkland region, depending on where the student lives. Right. And we try to figure that out as well. So it's a lot of collaboration with our team and trying to look around for what resources are out there. And then also collaborating with other organizations as well. So for example, with Hope Link or with, especially if they need some types of supports in that, or even like YES if they need mental health supports, in that way too. Because sometimes because of these situations and these problems, you also find out there's like a lot of mental health supports that they need as well. So also supporting them in that, and then just trying to make sure that we collaborate with organizations around the King County, but specifically Redmond, Kirkland, Eastlake area, just so that way we can make sure that those supports are, around in their area.
Thank you. And I know how hard it is in a district level to break down those silos between departments.
Yes.
So big ups to you and your team for being able to do that and
Thank
to
you.
collaborate with not only in your district, but also CBOs in the community.
Absolutely.
And we would love to just hear a few takeaways for participants and the attendees about how I know that you go above and beyond for students day in and day out, and just some general tips about how to support students.
Right. I'm gonna say it's not easy. It's very hard because especially, and I'll be very, very honest with all of you, when it comes to being in this district, I love being able to go to schools. I love being able to see my students. I love being able to work alongside with admin and teachers and staff, but it can be hard. And it's something for me, one thing that's really hard for me is just knowing the fact I am a Black woman coming into these spaces and it being predominantly white. And then also being first generation, my parents are from Nigeria. And so coming in also, but that bicultural aspect can be difficult. But a good takeaway that I have is just making sure that I can really level with the students I support and like really get to know them. I know as an adult, it's sometimes, you sometimes forget just like all the things that families and students specifically are going through, right? And I really try to make sure that when I see my students, I like really try to make sure I get to know them. Try to make sure that I'm coming from a space where they have a lot of knowledge too, and they know what's going on in their life. I don't know everything. And so when I talk with them, I really try to make sure I empathize with them. So that's another takeaway. Also too, in the fact that it's so important to collaborate with people. Like it's not easy doing all this by myself. And I'm so thankful for my team, because if it wasn't for them, there's no way we'd be able to get anything done. There's no way we'd be able to have the support and have that connection with the families like we do. Right. So just really making sure that collaboration piece is out there. And sometimes it's hard to even try to get that departmental connection collaboration, but continuing to try, because at the end of the day, we are here for our students and families, and they come in every day trying to just survive. And so we have to understand that and try to make sure that with that knowledge, we can take effective change as much as we can.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I know that it's really hard work, and you show up every day with such grace and positivity. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy day to share some of your wisdom with us.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to open it up if anyone has like a really quick question for Adana. Or maybe if you could share your contact info in the chat if anyone wants to connect afterwards. I know it's somewhat rare for a district to have a whole department committed to equity, unfortunately. And so I'm glad that, Lake Washington has taken that on, and hopefully other districts can emulate some of that work.
Exactly. Yeah.
But thank you again for your time. We really appreciate
Mhm.
you coming in. And thanks
Yes.
for all you do.
Please. Yeah, of course. And please let me know if y'all have any questions. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. I really appreciate this time.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we just have some really great guest speakers today. Y'all are amazing. I just am feeling very grateful for the folks in this work who are here to share what they're doing and how we can hopefully continue to support our students and learn from each other. Yeah. So with that, I have just literally like 2 more like content slides, and then we're gonna jump into breakout rooms for the last like 10-ish minutes of our training. Really love that space for folks to be able to connect with each other. We'll have some prompts, but you can go off script as much as you want while you connect in that space. So I'm gonna share my screen real quick for those last content slides. The one thing that I was kind of hearing in theme from all of our speakers today is really having an understanding of who are the resources, who's in your community, who's in your school system, who can you connect with, families with, who can you advocate with, and how can you really lean into that community space. So one way to kind of think about this and look at it is this tool called eco mapping. Eco mapping can look a million different ways, but the kind of intention behind it is to have a visual graphical representation that shows all the different systems at play in an individual's life. So this, it's often used in like family counseling, social work, nursing profession to get an idea of kind of what's going on for a student, a client, or a family. But we can really see how useful it can be in our work as well to understand all the different pieces going into the world around us. So sharing just a super quick example, it's a lot to read. I will not be reading every bit on the screen, but I will kind of point to the different categories. So this is an example of a basic needs ecosystem map developed by the Renton Innovation Zone. So their kind of goal was to think about what's going on in our area when thinking about our basic needs. So they went into the schools represented, the neighborhoods represented, race, ethnicities, and demographics served as applicable, the ages served, the organization names, location, district service or intermediary. So thinking about the different advocacy there too, and the services provided. So if this is something you're interested in learning more about eco mapping, I've got a different way to do it that I can share with you. We will be doing a live version in an event coming up in May that we'll share about in a little bit. And there's also lots of resources online that I can connect folks with if you want to learn more. But just really thinking about all the different speakers we have today and all the different resources we have in our community, how can we really see that whole system and be able to connect with it. All right, so these were our planned prompts for our breakout room. We had some different prompts for CBO, community-based organization staff that were different from our school staff. I think what I want to do is, you're welcome to use some of these prompts if you would like, but I think I'm just going to put us into a couple of different random breakout rooms for the next like 10 minutes and kind of open with the question of introducing yourselves to each other, connecting on who you are and what you do, and then any kind of things that have resonated with you today from today's training or questions that you have. And I think that's my prompt. Again, you're welcome to take any of these questions, thinking about outreach strategies for summer events, maybe if you're CBO, thinking about your partnerships and the different school-based programs. Also, thinking about school prompts for school staff. How are we preparing for summer break and communicating that with families? who's the point of contact during the summer? Do you have CBOs you connect to? And then what are the ways that your community partners could support your McKinney-Vento students in partnership with your school or district? So those are more specific questions, but again, going to send you into these rooms, connect with each other, and you can speak to what has resonated with you today or jump into more specific questions if you want. All right, we're going to come back at like 11:57 for my wrap up. And breakout rooms are going to be, there's 24 of us. I'm going to do 3 breakout rooms. 4 breakout rooms. And if you have any issue joining the breakout rooms, feel free to come off mute during this process and I can help guide in that space. All right, the rooms have now been open. You should have a prompt on your screen that says join breakout room, and it will have a number for you. We'll see you in 9-ish minutes. All right. Folks who are still in this main space, please let me know if you're having any difficulty getting into your breakout room, and I can help try and get you in there. Let's start that recording again for the last minute. Okay, last minute. Let's go. Share my screen real quick. All right, I hope that you were able to connect with some folks in your breakout room. If I forgot to add the prompt, share contact info. So if you are connecting with folks, you're sharing ideas, and you want to continue those conversations, pop that email in the chat to them right now, connect, phone number, whatever it may be. We've got a huge, incredible network that y'all can tap into in this space and in this work. So I really hope you can continue to learn and support each other. We were going to do another Mentimeter. Oh, Kayla dropped it. We're going to do the Mentimeter. And what we're going to do is you can have this up and kind of be entering it as we kind of wrap up for today. We're going to drop the survey link again as well. Thank you for that prompting. But please share a golden nugget from your breakout conversations or from today. I like to think of golden nuggets as like this little piece of like wisdom, inspiration, whatever you're carrying forward with you from today into the rest of your day and your work. And sometimes that's, I mean, I loved hearing that, Jacquetta, you start the meetings with a smile and you want to see everyone smile. I'm taking that away and I'm going to be bringing that into meeting spaces. So that's one of my many golden nuggets today. So feel free to kind of keep typing those in. And it says there's 2 answers. Oh, here they are. OEO, ESDs can be more professional development. Awesome. All right, so those are going to keep popping in. I think you should be able to keep entering them when I go to the next slide, and I will screenshot them and share them out with the slides. So in closing, here are the last kind of things we got for you. If you're doing clock hours, please complete the Survey Monkey or the survey on PD Enroller. Otherwise, do the Survey Monkey. Join our school housing network. It's a monthly meeting with lots of folks that are already in this space, and we talk about all the things. We bring in guest speakers. We've got future trainings. Our next one is on May 3rd about capturing data for McKinney-Vento. And then we've got a cool event, School Housing Community Partnerships. It's a convening on May 19th in person at the PSESD in Renton. We would love it if y'all could join us. So feel free to click that link, check it out. Join us if you are available. We'll have a bit of training, a bunch of speakers, some breakout rooms, and really the goal is to just have a space for folks to connect in this work in person. Wild. We haven't done an in-person event since like 2018, so we're very excited. And that is it. Sorry, I'm a minute over. Last little bit. Here's our contact info. Reach out with anything you need, and I'll be sending up a follow-up email. Yeah, And just another special shout out to all of our guest speakers today. Just some really amazing folks. Community Wisdom Council, like, it's amazing that such a cool group can exist. And I'm so excited and hope that other communities can take note from your lead and kind of keep it going for them as well. And with that, that's our training for today. I'm 2 minutes late. I'm so sorry, but thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.